Welcome to my freak show. AHS 1984 premiered last night, so let's go over the episode and rip it to shreds the way that my cat does our couch. Now, spoiler warning, this is going to be a review and a synopsis of the episode, so if you haven't watched it, don't watch this video unless you want to be spoiled. Now, in my opinion, episode 1 did its job. It set up the characters, told us what kind of people they are, who the killers are, and referenced the hell out of the 80s. It was a strong premiere, though it had some issues in my opinion, so let's go through all of them in this video. The show starts off in the year 1970, where two young women and a young man are doing what every teen do in the 80s. You know, they played Scrabble and studied their brains out, though they didn't do it in the same room as the kids were sleeping. Hello. So before you know it, the three and the rest of the kids in the camp are killed by a man in a dark rain slicker. Now, I've got to give it to him. If you really think about it, the killing of a child at any age is dark as fuck. And it's just a dark way to open this season. And the killing of all of these children make it even more darker. But thus our season begins. After those new badass opening credits, funny note, guys, AHS fan Corey Vega created the opening credits for fun and posted them on Twitter. Now, thankfully, the right person saw his video and asked to use his footage in the actual opening sequence this year. So congratulations to Corey. And it just goes to show you guys out there that you should never give up on your talents and your dreams, and to never regret putting your work out there for people to view. Why? Because you're a badass. Now back to the review. Now we get to meet the new victims, I meant the counselors of Camp Redwood at an aerobics class, which of course was the craze in the 80s. Now, can I just say that I loved the fact that they picked Frank Stallone's hit Far From Over to open the show? How many of us reenacted Tony Manero's dance scenes with Fiona Hughes in our bedroom as a kid? I mean, I'm probably the only one, but damn it, this season nailed the 80s references, products, musics, and, you know, whatever was relevant at the time. We got Cruel Summer by Bananarama, Private Eyes by Hall & Oates. I mean, guys, you should watch the episode. Just take a moment to watch it and then go back and actually listen in the background for the music that they actually air. I mean, no fail or shade from me in that aspect to the show. They got the 80s right. I mean, I nearly got up and danced like I was 6 years old all over again. I mean, until I realized I was 40 and my family was staring at me. So now there's only one person who's been hired for the camp, and that's Xavier, Cody Fern's character. Now, in the shower, which is exactly where Billy can wait for me, Montana, played by Billy, my lord, tells Brooke, Emma Roberts, that she noticed her checking out her friend Chet, Gus Kenworthy, during the actual class, and she can introduce them if she wants. Now, Brooke refuses, and after the class, Brooke meets everybody, which is Ray, Deron Horton. Brooke tells everybody that she's new in town. Xavier reveals that he is an actor, and he met Montana a couple of years ago when she rear-ended him in traffic and made him miss an audition. They dated for about one night after that. Ray explained that he's an orderly and met Chet at the gym, so they're gym buddies. He explains that he also met Montana at a party at Justine Bateman's house. Xavier says that he's leaving the city to get somewhere safe, and he mentions that the Night Stalker is still terrorizing the city and says that he got a job as a camp counselor and they can all get jobs with him, which I have to say was strange to me at first, but you know, back in the 80s, no one was required to clear a background check in order to work with children. Or hell, they were not even required to fill out an application. But it was strange to me when the counselors show up at the camp and they're the only counselors there. I mean, literally, guys, the only counselors except for Matthew Morris. So who's the activities director and basically their boss. I mean, what the hell would they have done? So as predicted, Leslie Grossman does own the camp and is the sole survivor of a massacre that happened in 1970, but we will touch more on that later. Now, that night, after the group decides that they will be camp counselors, Brooke is still a little leery. She goes home that night, And I mean, I just don't understand this. She tells the group, they're all talking about Richard Ramirez, and she tells them that killers do break in or are more active during the summer because of open windows. So she goes home and leaves her window open and goes to bed. So, of course, Richard Ramirez strolls his happy hiney right in. Brooke manages to defend herself, but before he left, Ramirez threatened to find Brooke and kill her. Man, Zach Villa was quite impressive as Ramirez. Thanks so much for taking the hit that Evan usually takes this season for us, Zach. Thank you. Now, naturally, Brooke thinks that escaping to Camp Redwood will solve all of her problems, which, I mean, is actually a brilliant idea. Through the entire episode, though, she does worry that Richard will come through with his threat and find her. But, I mean, shit, at this point I say don't worry, Brooke. I mean, it's the 80s. It's not like he can check your Facebook profile to see that you've pinned your location at Camp Redwood. Now, I love Montana. She's a sexually woke queen who isn't afraid to crack a joke at someone else's expense. On the way to Camp Redwood, Chet, Ray, Brooke, and Montana chat in the back of the van while Xavier drives. We learn that Chet trained for the U.S. Olympics but was disqualified for testing positive for drugs. And according to Ray, he's got enough blow and weed to last them through the summer. Hey Ray, so you single or what? They get the usual warnings from smoldering Patrick Swayze lookalike gas station owner named Ed when they stop for gas. Xavier makes a call at a payphone to check his messages, and it sounds like Cody Fern on the message leaving himself a "I know where you are and what your dick is doing" kind of a message. Like typical kind of a message. Now back on the road, though he's looking right fucking at him, Xavier manages to run over a guy who ran into the road. The guy seems like in bad shape and apparently been in the woods for a while. He doesn't remember who he is, but does remember to give the Scooby Gang cryptic clues to something he tried to do before they crashed into his life. They all agree to take the guy to the camp, and we get a "I know what you did last summer" vibe when Xavier insists that they tell everyone when they get at the camp that he didn't hit the guy, they simply found him on the side of the road and picked him up. Now when they arrive at the camp, Margaret Booth, who is played by Leslie Grossman, is the owner and there to greet them. She informs them that the kids arrive the next day, and guys, they are the only camp counselors. They take the guy that they hit with the van to the infirmary, and Angelica Ross, whose name we don't know yet, so they all just call her Nurse throughout the episode, so we'll just call her the same. She says that she works in an ER in Hawthorne Hospital, but now she's the bad bitch of Camp Redwood. So Margaret takes the gang on a tour of the camp while the hiker guy is passed out, and it's then that I realized that what the hell would Margaret have done had Xavier not brought 4 extra people with him? I mean, she's got the money to buy a camp but not hire the counselors. And I have to give it to them too, guys, in this episode. The cinematography in this episode was masterful. Huge snaps to them with a lot of these shots. Now they meet Chef Birdie, who is the chef when Margaret was a counselor and volunteered to be the counselor when it reopened. And it's here that we understand Margaret is committed to her faith. Very much. And I literally got chills, guys, because she is the type of person that I grew up with. And, it scared me when I was a kid, and it still scares me now. So good job, Leslie. Now that night, everyone gathers around the fire and does what we all did before fucking cell phones. We interact with one another. Nurse tells the story of what happened at the camp 14 years ago with Mr. Jingles. His name was Benjamin Richter, a former U.S. veteran who loved to kill. And she scares the shit out of all of them with the story of how he killed people and took their ears, stringing them on a necklace to wear. And, my first thought of that, guys, was like, ugh, Mr. Jingles is Daryl Dixon? But, then I remembered that was just the wrong franchise. So anyway, Margaret takes the group by surprise by showing up, and shit gets real, guys. She confirms that 9 people died during the massacre, and Brooke asks her if Mr. Jingles was real, and Margaret pulls back her hair and reveals the hole that now represents her ear. from where Mr. Jingles cut it off. I mean, nice little reveal there. I really like this part, but She tells the story of how she was asleep when she heard the keys jingling. Then she woke up right as Mr. Jingles stabbed her. She was practically dead when she was she said she felt saved by God, that she never screamed or cried. She was alive as he cut her ear off and then left her for dead. So Mr. Jingles was eventually caught and tried with Margaret as the main witness, and he was found guilty. Now, when Margaret's husband died, he left her a huge inheritance. So she bought the camp to take back her power, replacing her torment with bright, happy memories. And she insists that nobody else speak of the story ever again, but she did want to be upfront with the counselors who were working there. Now, a camera flashes to another incredible scene where the hiker that's hit by Xavier's van, he wakes up in the infirmary and he looks at himself in the mirror, guys, and he lifts his hair to see his ear missing. Oh, so gross. Now, my theory here is that somebody at the camp, not Mr. Jingles, did that to the hiker when he was passed out from the meds, which, would have been the perfect time to do it. Proof is that Mr. Jingles arrives later in the episode, so we will talk about this maybe in a theory video. But what do you guys think about that? Who do you think cut off his ear? Let me know in the comments. Now, Brooke goes to check on the hiker, and he flips out when he hears that they're at Camp Redwood, worse than I do when they flip off the free hot donut sign at the Krispy Kreme. God, I miss food. He tells Brooke to leave the camp, and she's like, you don't have to ask me twice. Later, dude. Now, she runs off from him, but then she calmly tells everyone what happened afterwards. Now, before they come to an illogical consensus, because let's face it, this is after 80s movies, Matthew Morrison's character, Trey, and his massive cock-a-doodle-doo enter the cabin. And this is where he is introduced for the first time, and it's so hilarious to watch Montana eye fuck him with lust, like all of us are doing when we're watching him on screen. Now, Montana does go skinny dipping, and he comes to join her. Yeah. He introduces her to his Colonel Angus, but a peeping Tom distracts them, sadly, and she doesn't get to ride his sausage train to O-Town just yet. Now, it is kind of creepy. There is a car off in the distance and they flash their lights at them. Somebody is watching them, but at this point, Mr. Jingles hasn't arrived, so I wonder who it is. We do flash to a scene after this, straight out of Halloween. We get a new scene. A doctor drives up to a sanitarium where the patients are wandering abroad on the grounds. A police officer, hey, that's Mitch Pileggi. Now, he informs her that Mr. Jingles escaped Goonie style and let out all the patients as a distraction. Everyone's like all in arms, kind of wondering where Mr. Jingles is gonna go, but they shouldn't worry about that because he basically left a note telling them where he is. Okay, I mean, seriously, I can't believe that. Mr. Jingles stops at the gas station that the counselors passed on the way to the camp to pick up a soda and murder Ed, the owner of the store. Now, that was a nice little gruesome kill, guys. If you didn't watch the episode, you should definitely check it out. Now, back at the camp, everyone is drinking, and Chet is being a real Debbie Downer. And he snaps at Brooke when she tries to be sweet to him, and straight up, Ray calls him a dick. And in retaliation for that, Chet throws a crumpled up beer can at him, which Ray does reflect with his hand, but he gets cut on the side of his hand in the process. So he goes to the infirmary to tend his massive cut. He goes to the bathroom to wash it out, and Brooke follows him to go help him. And it is at this point where we get the clip scene where Mr. Jingles arrives at Camp Redwood. So if he's just arrived, who was in the woods earlier watching Trey in Montana? And then who was the person who cut off the hitchhiker's ear? And he only escaped earlier. He just was even recently in the area. He couldn't have done either of those things. Tell me what your theory is about that in the comments, guys. Back at the infirmary, Brooke and Ray kind of have this moment where I feel some really great chemistry between the two. And I really do hope that one doesn't die before we can find out if there's really passion to that fire there. Brooke goes to the infirmary because she offers to get supplies to help Ray, but instead she finds the hiker dead on the door instead. Mr. Jingles surprises her and chases her to the cabin where the rest of the counselors are staying. She does make it there safely, and she tells them Mr. Jingles tried to kill her. But when the guys go to open the door, they find no one, of course. Now they go back to the infirmary to try to find the body, but there is no body. And instead of just thinking, maybe Mr. Jingles took the body, maybe she's right, they just assume that instead the hiker just got up out of the bed and just walked out. Literally. Brooke is trying to insist here that she is not crazy and didn't imagine all of this, but no one believes her and truly thinks that this hitchhiker that got mowed over by a van earlier that day just got up out of his cot and simply walked out. Okay. So later that night, this is one long damn night, guys. The payphone is ringing outside of the counselor's cabin. Brooke hears it and she goes to answer it. Nobody else heard it though, which kind of made me wonder if Brooke actually heard it or if it was in her mind. Now there's no one on the other end except for the sound of jingling as Richard Ramirez stands in the woods watching Brooke. And that is how the show ends the episode. So I've given the synopsis and I've talked about everything except kind of like what I didn't like. And what I didn't like was the simplicity of the script. To me, the first episode sets the tone of the series and is supposed to tell a story while leaving us wanting more. Compared to Asylum in a Hotel, the mecca of all seasons, this season felt empty. I want this thick sausage sandwich, and AHS is the best sandwich maker. But lately, they've only been serving me cold cheese sandwiches. Now, don't get me wrong, cheese sandwiches rock when you're poor and starving. But when you're used to eating big, thick sausage every day, you expect thick sausage every day, okay? So why the fuck did Brooke just leave her window open when she just told the group serial killers are more active in the summer due to open windows? And what was with Margaret only hiring one counselor to work at the camp? One! There's some straight up bad business sense and beyond the realm of make-believe, But we must suspend reality sometime for the show. But come on, you have to give an effort on the writer's side in order to be clever, okay? They have to give some kind of effort and not put it on the fans to just find it. And why did Mr. Jingles just leave that newspaper clipping behind, just telling authorities where he'd be? It just doesn't make sense. To do that. Why did he just throw it away? Eat it? I don't know. Something else. Don't get me wrong. I did love this first opening show, but I hoped it would sweep me off my feet. Again, the episode did its job, laying the blueprint for the storylines and the tone of the show, and we got a little mystery on every character to be suspicious, yet, kind of connect with them. But something was missing, and hopefully I'll find that piece in the rest of this season. Now, what were your thoughts on episode 1? And what are your theories for this season now that you've seen episode 1? If you liked my review and synopsis, then click that like button. Or if you can take it one step further, if you'd like, become a patron. For only $1, you can get exclusive live streams and videos. And of course, exclusive looks at my content. Links are in the description. And Beyond the Horror, my unofficial AHS 1984 after show is every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, immediately following the newest episode of AHS, except for last night because there was a technical difficulty, so please excuse that. And I'm always making theory videos, so click that subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. Thanks guys so much for watching, and of course, beware of our girl, Sexy Scathach.
Beware of Sexy Scathach.